Hello, BookTube. I have fallen into the habit recently of simply talking to you about a list of random ass books, just recommending them to one extent or another. Some this will fill a niche. Some you might like this. Others you must read this. I don't know how long this pattern is going to hold, but I do like talking about books with you. So I have another list for you. More books for you to hear about, maybe for the first time, for you to consider, maybe reconsider. And we'll start with a debut novel. I'm a big fan of debut novels because they open up a whole world of possibilities. You don't know what the author is going to do for the rest of their career. I don't know if this particular author has ever written anything else. But the author is Kirk Lynn, and he wrote a really good debut novel called Rules for Werewolves. Set during a financial collapse when a whole bunch of basically a feral pack of house squatters are moving from place to place and falling in and out of relationships with each other. But eventually, in the course, it's a slim book in every sense of the word. But eventually, in the course of the narrative, they start to wonder if they are coherent enough to need societal rules of exactly the kind that in the broader society they are ignoring. There are factors at work here that are really good. This is a low-key, I imagine this must have been a nightmare to sell as a debut novel, but there are low-key factors at work here that are very good. I liked it and would like to see more from this author. I'll have to check to see if he's written anything else. Nothing else that is coming to my mind as having cropped up on my radar. But it's a debut novel. I don't want to get into... I've fallen into the spiral of the existential crisis of what happens to books. A few times in these recommendation videos I've done that. I don't want to do that again. But it's still very much on my mind. Rules for Werewolves, I'm sure, is out of print. And I'm sure that it's never coming back into print. So what was it? Anyway, this next one is an older work of reference. Works of reference have fallen out of currency completely. At my used bookstore, I will often see a whole shelf out in the sale lot of formerly marquee works of reference that are all $1 a piece, and they're going to sit there. No one's going to get them. Why would you need a work of reference when you have an iPad? When you have an iPad connected to the internet, it puts 90% of what you would need a work of reference for at your fingertips without needing to have a gigantic book on a shelf. Some works of reference, that isn't true. Some works of reference are actually works of art. They are works of extreme editorial discretion and insight. And as such, they are keepers. I have a bunch of those, but there's one that I have here I want to show you. I found just a picture off the internet that I really wish I could find. I really wish I still had this. This is the Oxford Dictionary of Quotations. This is just, it's had many looks to it. I wish the next one that I see at the bridal shop, I will try to grab. I'll try to remember to grab it because I had a copy of this once. Didn't look like this. That I used endlessly. I used it until I cracked the binding on it. Because it is well put together. With dictionaries of quotations, often that is not the case. Often it's not just that the editors in question have been very timid or very boring or very derivative with what quotes they've chosen, but also often it's the case that they haven't chased down the provenance. So you've got a dictionary of quotations where a lot of the quotations are wrongly attributed or inaccurate or both. You have to pick and choose among these things for the good ones, and this was a good one. Okay, then we have another novel. You people all wanted me to add some fiction to the list. Doing my best. This is by Mal Peet. Again, I don't know if this author has ever written anything else, but this came across my desk, my transom, years ago, and I loved it. I read it and loved it. It's called the Merdstone Trilogy. A novel. It's about a failing writer who is told by all the smart young things in the literary world that if he really wants to strike it big, he should write an epic fantasy trilogy. And he hates the very idea of doing that. He hates Tolkien. He hates all the crap of epic fantasy literature. This book was written before that crap reached the heights that it has reached today. Oh my God. If I remember correctly, the timing, this book was written before the phenomenon of Brandon Sanderson, before the Stormlight Archives, which is both a really interesting series and also an instant meme of the gigantic fantasy series as a thing. It's both those things at the same time. And it's not alone. And the main character in this book feels only revulsion towards such a thing. He feels revulsion towards the idea, and he also doesn't think he can do it. And he gets an emissary. Is the emissary himself a creature of fantasy? Well, the emissary promises to help him write the book. To write, in fact, the books. To write the Merdstone Trilogy. That will salvage his career and revivify his finances. But is there a Faustian bargain in place? This is just delightful. I want to say that I do say that the people who should read this book the most are the very people we know from BookTube, the fantasy tubers. The guys who have the exact same books on the shelves behind them, the exact same lighting coming up from the floor in an Art Deco tone, and who never read anything else. They never read anything else. They might claim that they do, but they don't. They only read epic fantasy. And ideally, I would say the people who most should read this book are those people, but they never will. They never will. So, and unfortunately. Okay, then we have American history. This is Ray Raphael and Marie Raphael. This is The Spirit of 74, not The Spirit of 76. This book is about when the cauldron of the colonies boiled over. It is not when there was an explosion. It is not when the revolution started. It is when the cauldron boiled over. And my own town here, Boston, has a pride of place there because it's the Boston Tea Party. That was the cauldron boiling over. That was the colonies doing thousands of dollars worth of damage as protest. Damage where it would hurt the most. And the events that followed, some of them horrifying, others not, culminating, I think, if I remember correctly, this book culminates with the so-called shot heard round the world at Lexington and Concord. Really good, energetic writing. That I do remember. On a period that deserves its own spotlight. Often books on the American Revolution don't give the spotlight that these events really warrant. Okay, all right, this next one is an in-joke here for these recommendation videos. I don't know what these recommendation videos are. It's just me talking about books. I'm not always even wholeheartedly recommending the book. I've just fallen into this trap, this spiral, this La Brea tar pit of just talking about random books with you. and you all seem to be enjoying it. So in an earlier video, I misspoke the title of a book because I had another book on my mind. The title that I said was The Killer Angels by Michael Shara, and so I thought I'd put that one on this list in case I haven't mentioned it enough on this channel. This is Michael Shara's great novel about the Battle of Gettysburg in the American Civil War. The many Civil War guys will tell you that there are all sorts of potential turning points for the American Civil War. Of course, cutting off commerce on the Mississippi River, taking Vicksburg. All of those things have major claimants, but I think most people, including probably a lot of scholars, would say that it was the Battle of Gettysburg that was the turning point. It was the Battle of Gettysburg in which the South was defeated, which feels ironic to say because the South put up a hell of a fight on a whole bunch of battles after Gettysburg. But nevertheless, Gettysburg was when it was made completely clear, both to the South and the North, that under the leadership of General Robert E. Lee, the South would never invade the North. A different general on day one of Gettysburg could have made a very big difference, but a different general was never going to happen. This is a historical novel that is incredible. I know that eyes are rolling. Some of you don't like history. Some of you don't like historical fiction. I will tell you what I told 25 years of customers at a retail bookstore. If you don't like this book, I'll buy it back from you. There is no chance you won't. This is unbelievably effective stuff. And I don't want to hear, of course I'm not censoring what you say, but I don't want to hear people saying, oh, I've heard it's part of a trilogy. It's not part of a trilogy. This is not part of a trilogy. This is a brilliant standalone novel. And this author's son wrote two come see, come saw, relatively grade C+ novels that bracketed on one side and on the other historically. But this is not part of a trilogy. This author did not write a trilogy. So you can just ignore the Jeff Shara books. You can just ignore them. Then we have a book by Thomas Mitchell. This is Democracy's Beginnings. This is the familiar story of Periclean Athens, 5th century Athens. and the idea, the rough sketching idea of the beginning of representative democracy. Of course, it was a very sketchy beginning. We have to keep that in mind. The Dude Bros don't keep that in mind, but we have to keep that in mind. The reason that the Dude Bros don't keep it in mind is because what ordinary people view as the limitations of Athenian democracy, they view as its strong points. In other words, no women. But also not just no women. All the men that stood up in the assembly at Athens and talked about the inalienable rights of human beings to govern their own affairs had slaves in their country estates. That's why they got to do nothing all day. I won't comment on whether or not the Dude Bros are a fan of that. They're definitely a fan of women not having any say in what goes on. And so this is baby steps. Of course, you wouldn't expect democracy to be born fully formed. But Mitchell does a really good job of it's very, very familiar territory. But if you want, this is not a long book. If you want a not long account of this that keeps in mind that you might not know everything about it, that orients you in terms of a relatively beginner to the subject, this would do really well. I'm just going to, preface and interlace to all of these videos that in all of these books, I have no idea whether or not the book in question is in print. The Killer Angels, I feel certain, is still in print. Some of these others might not be. Like this next one. This is by Peter Hennessy. This is Whitehall. This is a big, fat book of his that I did not know about when it came out originally. It passed me by completely. This is, for me, a rare instance of something that happens to a lot of you commonly. This is a book that I discovered by browsing randomly at the library. And I know a lot of you find new books that way. For a lot of you, that is the way you find new books. But for years, I have relied on the new book industry to inform me, precious little hothouse flower that I am, about new books. I have not gone hunting for these things. I missed this completely and only knew about it when I found it at the Boston Public Library. And I loved it. It's all about civil servants. It's all about the vast civil servant structure of English government. But Hennessy makes it so wonderfully readable and so full of people with great quotes that it's about the civil service, but I didn't care. I certainly didn't find it boring. Not at all. I wish I had a copy of it. Wish I had a print copy of it. I found that copy at the library, probably given the state of public libraries in the last 20 years. Probably the Boston Public Library has dumped it by now. They use the horrible word de-access. But they probably dumped it by now. They've probably thrown it away and would never get it again. And I've never seen it at the Brattle or any other used bookstore. So I'd love to find it. I'd love to have a copy of it and reread it. Okay, then we have an author. I just mentioned the Brattle. I'll try not to belabor that connection. But this is an author who's famous for one book. This is Sven Burkett. He's famous for the Gutenberg Elegies, which is subtitled something like Reading in an Electronic Age. And changing the subject is further thoughts on that whole idea, that the electronic world might start to sap attention spans, might want to do that. And these are really good. This is a little known follow-up to the Gutenberg Elegies. Was famous for 10 years. It was famous. And this is a really good follow-up to that doesn't get any attention at all on all of those subjects. Now, you're going to want, this is, I think, 20 years old. So you're going to want to approach this with that in mind. This subject is changing rapidly. It's changing every day. And we're all living through those changes. When Sven Burkett wrote these pieces and when he wrote the Gutenberg Elegies, the idea of the extent to which electronic media could distract you was in its infancy. No one had any idea. When the Gutenberg Elegies came out, no one had any idea what social media would be, much less that social media would eventually be run by social media, that would be run by AI, and that AI would start to generate it. The subject is moving, of course, but this is a really good thinker, and you want to read those books. Okay, then we have something by Debbie Ridpath Ohi. This is a children's book that is absolutely wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful. It's called Where Are My Books? And it's about a boy who loves to read. And he has his little collection of books, and he loves his little collection of books, but he notices that they keep going missing. What's going on? He has a whole bunch of searches that he goes on. Where are these? Where are these books? Reading this book out loud to your little ones will provide you with ample opportunity for physical theater because you can pause in your reading to look around their room in various poke holes and cubby holes and underneath things, looking for books. Lots of fun to do that with a listening audience of kids. It's lots of fun to read this book that way. And of course, the little boy does eventually find his books. But is it possible? Is it just possible that the reason they've gone missing is because someone else wants to read them? So it ends up, in addition to being a fun book to read / perform for your little ones, it also ends up very unobtrusively, very, very non-beat you over the head. It ends up teaching a lesson. Not only about the camaraderie of book readers, but also about sharing. Delightful. I don't know if it's still in print, but it's delightful. Then we have a big fat book by Nicholas Stargard. This is The German War. And it is World War II, 1939 to the end, largely from the German perspective. What motivated the army? What motivated volunteering? How did people respond to conscription? How is it seen? And also the big events are narrated as well, the big victories and defeats of the German army and the German Air Force. So it's pretty much a history of World War II from the German point of view. There have been 2 books that I know of that do this even more, that go at this even more. One of which has never been translated into English, and I don't doubt that it's never been translated into English. It came out about 30 years ago, something like that. The author made it perfectly clear, this is a thought experiment. I'm taking you through the primary documents to show you how the Germans thought about this war. I am not saying they were right to think these things. That book, which is all about the German view of the war, has never been translated, I don't think. But this is really good. This author is really good. I had the advanced copy of this. I had unbound galley pages of this. Then I had advanced copy. Then I had the finished copy. They're all gone. And I've never seen this in the wild. So I would love to read it again. I think it would hold up really well. I really enjoyed it. And also, I wasn't the only one. I don't know if you can see there. The blurb on the cover of the paperback is by Adam Tooze, who is an amazing, amazing historian and writer. If he likes your book, that's a blurb worth taking to the bank. Okay. There we go. This is Ross MacDonald. Ross MacDonald has been on my mind lately. I have been slowly, hungrily rereading his Lou Archer books. The hard-boiled California crime novels that they're a little bit hokey. They're a little bit on the... Let's just say every time Lou Archer gets into a fist fight, which is in the later books every book, every time that happens, I'm less and less sure that Ross MacDonald ever got into a fist fight. But he wrote a little book, just a little pamphlet-sized thing, called On Crime Writing, which he did a lot of, and he read a lot of it. And Lou Archer was famous as a character. I don't know if the Lou Archer books are still in print, but they were, once upon a time, they did really well. He is in the pantheon of tough guy crime writing. I would myself include Rex Stout's Nero Wolfe books in that pantheon, even though Nero Wolfe himself is an eighth of a ton and scarcely ever moves, because of Archie Goodwin. Archie Goodwin is his much younger private eye, his legs, his muscle. Archie Goodwin is very much cut from the same cloth as Travis McGee or Sam Spade or Lou Archer. He's very much cut from that cloth, only he happens to be one of those figures who is thoroughly domesticated. He is employed by Nero Wolfe, and when you're employed by Nero Wolfe, you don't go rogue. you don't go out on your own. You in fact control your violence. In the Nero Wolfe novels, Archie Goodwin almost never exerts violence in the presence of Nero Wolfe without Nero Wolfe asking him to. Almost never. Usually it will take the form of Wolfe barking out Archie, just the name Archie. But Goodwin almost never does it otherwise. And there are a couple of points. One in I think book number 9 or book number 10, where Archie has to restrain someone in the office, has to physically restrain her. And Nero Wolfe actually says, "You can let her go. I don't like the look on your face when you act this way." Even though Wolfe asked him to act this way. So there you have a little signal, I think, that if Archie Goodwin were not domesticated, if he were not spending his time recording orchid sale records that he would be the same thing as Lou Archer or Sam Spade or whatnot. And I read this little pamphlet. I don't know that I have it anymore. I probably don't. And if I don't, I shouldn't have got rid of it because you never see it. But Ross MacDonald was a deep thinker on all of this. I think you can tell that in his books. I think if he had not thought that it would be petty to rip off a cerebral hero like Nero Wolfe, he would have done it. Instead, Lou Archer is anything but cerebral. And so when he has his aha moments in his mysteries, you largely don't believe them. You don't think that he would notice anything. But MacDonald is great on the subject of writing about this subject. So if you can find a copy of this book, read it and enjoy it, and then send it to me, because you're not allowed to keep it if I want it and don't have it. Sorry. As I told one of you in emails, I don't make the rules. Then we have William Anderson. This is an older book. This is Dante the Maker. This is a biography of Dante that is really, really good. Dante has had a handful of good biographies in English, and I think this might be the best one. I think it's... I largely have my doubts about doing this. This might be the best biography of Dante. It's not my favorite. My favorite biography of Dante was written in 19th century Boston by a 19th century Bostonian, of course. And the facts don't change. But I often think... my hesitation here is that your time is much better spent grappling with Dante than with his biography. I think of all the people I have known who were perfectly happy to chew the fat with me about the various Dante biographies or even Dante studies in English, who have not got all the way through the Paradiso, even in an English language translation. And that effort is better spent grappling with Dante's poem than with Dante's life. But Dante's life is really interesting, and this does a really good job. No idea if it's still in print. I know that it has been reprinted a couple of times, so there will be copies out there as secondhand. Okay, then we have a novel. We'll have another work of fiction for all you people who want fiction. This is by Timothy James Beck, and again, I don't know about this author. No idea if he's done anything else. If so, it's not coming to my mind. And this is for the gays. You got to have something for the gays. This is When You Don't See Me, about a teenager who is a specialist at disappearing. Doesn't have any superpowers. But when he wants to fade into the woodwork so that you absolutely don't know he's there, when he wants to disappear even from a conversation in which he's taking part, he will, and you won't know he's there. He's expert at that for a whole bunch of bad reasons. Obviously, you don't get good at disappearing except for bad reasons. Naturally, an extrovert would say that, but nevertheless, it's true. For a whole bunch of bad reasons, he gets really good at this. And then in the novel, he succumbs to the siren song of the gays and goes to Manhattan, where it's easy to disappear, where in fact it's hard to be visible. And seems like he's just going to go on more and more about that, but gradually things start to pull him out into the light. And Timothy James Beck, bless him, has one of those things be the prospect of love. So I don't know if this book is still available, but it is quite enjoyable to read. Then we have Susan Southard. This is another World War II adjacent. World War II, definitely. This is Nagasaki. This is her book, her version of John Hersey's book on Hiroshima. In that famous little book, which you should definitely read, you should definitely read Hiroshima. In that book, the author starts with the explosion of the bomb over the city, and then follows the profiles of a handful of people, ordinary people, who are affected by it. And this author does the same thing for Nagasaki, the other Harry Truman's other A-bomb victim city, where thousands of people, more than 10,000 people in Nagasaki. Think how many people 10,000 people is. How many of you are watching this video in a town of fewer than 10,000 people? That morning in Nagasaki, more than 10,000 people were instantly evaporated. I'm not talking about more than 10,000 dead bodies. There were plenty of those. There were more than 10,000 dead bodies, dead and burnt bodies, or burnt bodies of people who were alive and would give anything for you to kill them. I'm talking about 10,000 people that were evaporated. Just no trace left at all. They just vanished. This author picks a cast of characters among those who lived and could tell their tale and does a great job. A great job. Now, Hiroshima, that book, Started off as a whole issue of the New Yorker. It went into paperback. It got a paperback deal for the author that set him up for life. Went into school curricula. It is still in school curricula. Maybe not now, certainly not in 2 years, but now it might still be in school curricula. In other words, there was no way that this book was ever going to equal the performance of that book, but it is still really good. Really, really worth reading. Okay, then we have an author that has come up on my library tour. This is a book of his that I do not have. Wish that I could find it. This is John Haye, the great author of Cape Cod books, and he wrote a book called The Bird of Light, about the tern. That is wonderful. It's a bird book, but it's also very much a Cape Cod book. And this would probably be, there's a great used bookstore that I guess, and if a guest has a car, we often go to in Connecticut. And it has a whole building for nature books. Bird books, nature books. The last few times that I've been there, I've had the bean along, of course, and that is a joy. It's a joy not to leave your dog behind. I remember what that was like. It was agony. It's a joy to have my dog with me, and it's also a joy to see her out and about in the world, because she screams at total strangers to stop what they're doing and fuss over her. She just screams at them to do that, and it's absolutely adorable. But the last few times that I've been to that bookstore, I have not gone into that building, where this book probably is. So I need to fix that next time we go. This is really good. I've read it. I want to own a copy. Then we have Cleopatra's Wedding Present. This is a travelogue through Syria by Robert Tudor Morse. The cover is not exactly ill-chosen. That is the back of a shapely, handsome young man. This author was also a shapely, handsome young man who wrote this book about his experiences traveling in Syria. And it's really good. It's really good travel writing. And I wish that I could say that it was the beginning of a long career of writing great travel writing books, but this author was murdered, brutally murdered, immediately after he finished this book. So there are no others. So it's the last thing in the world that he would have wanted. He was a bit of a perfectionist. So the last thing in the world he would have wanted was for this to be his monument. But nevertheless, it's also really good. It is that, unfortunately, but it also is a really good book, a really good travelogue. Then we have Michael Van Cleve Alexander. This is work, I found a picture off the internet. It's in really crappy condition. The picture is in really crappy condition. This is the first of the Tutors, a study of Henry VII, the first of the Tudor line, the man who took the crown of England in combat from Richard III. The last king, of course, to do that in English history, and set up a new dynasty of his own that had only the barest quasi-fictional claim to legitimacy. He set up his own dynasty, and it was very, very fragile. And this is a story of his reign and his time and his rule, including dealing with a whole bunch of insurrections, a whole bunch of public unrest, a whole bunch of claimants to the throne, like Perkin Warbeck, people that thought, or Lambert Simnel, people that thought, you're insecure enough, you took the crown, so you can lose it. And the Tudors really never stopped being insecure on the throne, even though they lasted for a while. They never really stopped being insecure. Henry VII, Henry Tudor, was fertile after the minimal Tudor line, but no other Tudors were. And so in addition to the older powers in the country always thinking that you're, a grasping parvenu who should be overthrown, you also don't have a whole nursery full of heirs. This is wonderful. This is really thickly textured stuff. This is not part of the, the University of California did a whole line of biographies of British kings and queens. Is it University of California or, whoever it is. A lot of those books are definitive. A lot of those books are the best books you can get on the subject. This was not part of that series, but still really good. Okay, then we have Adam Boardman wrote a book called An Illustrated History of UFOs. This is basically a graphic novel about the UFO phenomenon. There you have a car. Probably the people in it are having lost time. There's an elk being tractor beamed up to a flying saucer. This is a story of where this whole phenomenon started, how it flourished and when, what the major players are, and where it stands today. Today being decades ago. So you wouldn't have in here any of the stupid falderall that came up in congressional hearings about what the the Pentagon might be hiding about UFOs, which aren't even called UFOs anymore. It doesn't have any of that. It doesn't matter. It could have that, and it could have a whole lot of other stuff. It still doesn't matter. None of this is real. But it's fascinating to watch it as a phenomenon grow, and the artwork here is good. Then we have a book by Richard Bassett called For God and Kaiser. This is the Austrian Army, when Austria was making trouble for a couple of centuries, when it was hyper-militaristic. This is a big, fat history of that army and all the adventures that they get into, both on Austrian soil and in Austria's constant attempts to colonize. And there's a lot of regimental stuff here. There's a lot of detail here, but Bassett is really good. He's really good at narrating this. So if you're interested in the subject, this is a book to have, definitely. And then we can finish up this time around. I don't know what these are, and I don't know how many more of them there'll be. This is Sir Edward Creasy, and this is his classic book, which I pulled a cover off the internet. This isn't what my copy looks like. There have been innumerable reprints of this. This is 15 Decisive Battles of the World, from Marathon to Waterloo, in order categorical. He's chosen the 15 decisive battles of the world, and all of them are big. All of them are potentially turning points. Of course, you could double that number, or you could suggest 15 of your own that don't include most of these. It would have to include Waterloo. It would have to include Marathon. But there are plenty of huge battles in here that he doesn't include. But he's wonderful. A wonderful old-school military historian writing about these things, and you can't beat that. You can't beat the assurance of that. So even though there are many, many books like this, or there were, this one is one to read, definitely one to find. And there have been so many editions of this that you will be able to find a copy, definitely. So we'll end with this. We'll end with a strong recommend. If you're interested in military history, you got to read Creasy. Not just this book. But anyway, there you go. There are some more random recommendations of books for you. So I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.